that we exclude those small producers.
Thanks, Mr. Conroy. You know, we're calling this the legalization of cannabis, this bill, but really it's really we're making it less illegal, is what we're really doing by this.
A little bit of legalization.
Yeah, well, there's, you know, it's still, if you have more than 30 grams on you in possession, you'll be criminally charged. If you have more than 4 plants, you'll be criminally charged. Penalties up to 14 years imprisonment. If you have more than 5 grams as a youth, you face some sort of penalties. I'm just wondering, one of the purposes of this bill in Section 7 is to reduce the burden on the criminal justice system. Do you see that happening?
Well, you know, I live in the cocoon of British Columbia where people haven't been charged with simple possession now for a long time. The police just seize it. You still see lots of charges, but rarely convictions, unless it's something more than simple possession. So we still have, but you know, my practice, I don't get anywhere near as many cases as I used to in the old days, even though you haven't legalized yet. So, you know, the burden has reduced. But having this maximum 14 years hybridized by indictment and so on is frankly totally unrealistic in terms of what goes on the ground. Even the Saskatchewan Court of Appeal, which is not known to be the most liberal court in the country, their range for trafficking, for example, is 12 to 18 months. So, you know, most sentences are up to 2 years. For tobacco, for alcohol, all your maximums are 2 and 3 years. So this 14-year thing is ridiculous, frankly. And it's problematic because it will increase the burden in this way. Years ago, through the Sentencing Commission, through Parliament here and so on, we determined that we had to reduce the amount of incarceration because we just make people worse most of the time instead of really protecting the public. And so why are you going to put somebody in prison, actual prison, for trafficking in cannabis nowadays? It seems ridiculous. A judge, we introduced something called the conditional sentence order. And the conditional sentence order is the last step before having to put you actually in prison. So depending upon levels of denunciation and deterrence, the judge decides whether to put you in prison or not. 14-year maximum, because of the 2012 amendments, prevents a judge from doing that. So, you know, what's 14 years got to do when the court is sitting there saying, we think up to 2 years is a fit sentence, but we also think you're not a danger to the community, you don't have any violence in your history or anything like that, so we think you can serve it in the community, the judge can't do it. So what do judges do faced with that now? Well, they'll go and give probation with conditions to try and structure it like a conditional sentence order. So, you know, I really encourage you to listen to what Ledane said at least 45 years ago and reduce that to 5 years if you're going to keep a hybridized system. But my hope and expectation is that the cannabis consumers that I have now watched over a long period of time are going to demonstrate to you that they will be able to live under this existing proposed beginning, if I can call it that, and will not create lots of problems, hopefully, for the criminal courts and others, that we will effectively, in practice, legalize and demonstrate to all of you that you don't need many of these limits and so on that you're worrying about.
All right, that concludes our session on the household cultivation of plants, and we appreciate the information you've given us. We continue to learn. I think we've all learned a lot today from your input, so I thank you very much for taking the time to come and participate.